it shouldn't even be moral, right? It should just be like, my hair is blonde, Timmy is gay. It should be just as normal as that, but it's made into something that is abhorrent, right? It's made into something that is considered a sin. And that's why I feel it's necessary to speak out. The search for truth is the biggest part of this channel's objective. I was originally raised as a Christian in a very theologically forced household with a father who is well-versed in theology. So I'm well aware of Christianity and the monolith that it holds, and I still do hold an academic kind of interest in it. But I should be forward that I'm not an academic. I haven't studied philosophy in school. I haven't studied theology. My interest purely comes from my drive to learn more and to always know more and understand more about the universe and what is true. So this always pushes me into the most honest possible conversations I can have with people. I never try and act in bad faith. I may have arguments that I've already formed over time when speaking with theists or people of opposing views. But the purpose of every argument I have is to try and come to a better understanding, learn about something more. And so that's what brought me to pretty much deconverting and deconstructing my whole religious and Christian outlook when I was around 11, 12 years old, really finally deconverted at age 13. And that's when I kind of became an existentialist nihilist. The point of this video is to give you my views and my understanding of the world. So first I'll say I am an existentialist nihilist and I am an agnostic atheist. So what does that all mean? An agnostic atheist, as I've explained in other videos, is agnostic. You have no claim to knowledge. I don't know anything, but I'm an atheist in that I have no belief in the existence of God. So agnostic, I don't know a God exists, and atheist, I have no belief a God exists. If you can demonstrate to me that a God exists, then I will be happy to believe that. But I have yet to be demonstrated properly and sufficiently that a God exists, especially a God that is of your own particular religion. Now, a big rebuttal I get from theists that I talk to all the time, still today, is what I would address at the end of this video. But first then, let me continue on to this next part, which is the existentialist nihilist part. I then asked myself, okay, if there is no God and there is no sort of outline rigidly defined by a creator of the universe, then what is the goal of anything? What is anything's point or purpose? And so this led me to the ultimate realization, and I would love to hear if you have an answer outside of this, that we don't have a purpose, right? A purpose is something that we've invented. So there is nothing innate about us as matter, as physical formulations of chemicals or what have you that leads to any sort of purpose or greater cause, is what a theist or someone believing in God might say or presume. And so many people use this as an argument against nihilism and against atheistic worldviews. But I still hold that, and I don't think it's an argument. I think it's a non sequitur. Just because it's depressing or bleak as an outlook that we have no meaning or purpose doesn't make it any less true. It just makes it bleak and depressing. So yes, it was very bleak and very depressing. And yes, it was probably the most memorable depressing period of my time, going from theistic Christianity to existential nihilism in a bit over a month, right? Was the crunch time. I had all this doubt and questioning. It's just my personality. I always ask questions. I always try to learn more, which eventually led to my deconstruction and deconversion. And then, of course, existentialist nihilism. And so when I tried to discover it, what do I do from here? Now, this is where existentialist nihilism is freeing. And if you are somebody on the verge of where I was at a decade ago, you're leaving a belief system that's held this whole point that you have a greater purpose, you have an afterlife, you have a deity behind you. And now you're coming to grapple with the facts that maybe I can't believe in something I don't think is logically true. Then you have to understand, what is our purpose, right? And if you're going to let go of everything supernatural, everything superstitious, everything that is allegedly divine, then what do you do? And this is a big answer I'm working on in my upcoming book that I would love to share with you once I'm done publishing it. Shout out to my patrons as well. If you get into the top tier, you'll get a free PDF of it when it comes out. But my biggest and clearest answer is that we invented ourselves. And that's the most honest thing I think we can do. Why? Well, because it's the most pragmatic thing to do. So you invent your own purpose and you invent your own meaning for your life and existence. And I think this is the most pragmatic, as I just said, thing, what you can do in your life, but it's also the most uplifting and surprisingly the most, I think, self-help inducible idea. When you really look back ultimately at what religion is saying, right? You have a divine mandate of what you must do versus your own free will and autonomy of what you decide to do and how you decide to make your life and what you decide to make out of it. And some people, of course, the first objection, and this always just befuddles me. I spoke with needgod.net a month ago, and he mentioned, of course, this is the first rebuttal I always get when you say, no, you make your own purpose. You have your own set of morals and those sorts of things. The first objection I always get is, well, why don't you just go around murdering and raping people? Okay, so I think it was Christopher Hitchens who said this. I go and rape as much as I want, which is no rapes. I don't want to rape people, and so I don't need. And I hate this sounds like a cliche, but it's true. I don't need a God to tell me not to rape, to not rape. That's not anything preventing me from living the way I do and creating my own ethical frameworks of the life that I choose to live. And this is the most liberating part, which theists find terrifying. But no, when you have no God, when you have no ultimate ledger of everything you must do and be and exist in, and how you ought be, and how you're a failure as a human, and how you must recover for that, or how you must submit yourself to a savior for that, or whatever the case is, you have to do it all yourself. You have to think about it all yourself. You have to create your own meaning. But that, to me, is the most deep and personal and moving part of this existence, is that we have only what we have here. Life is so much more poetic that there is nothing watching, because we have to create it all ourselves, right? This is the one existence we have. This is it. And then we die. That's as far as I know. And so this is pragmatically why it's so much more meaningful to be an existentialist nihilist, why it's, I think, pragmatic to be like a naturalist or a physicist, whatever you might want to call it, where you only everything that you can observe and measure is what we're going to call true, right? You assume there's a universe, you assume you can acquire knowledge about the universe and gain it from like an evidentiary perspective. That's what I hold to truth. And this is what theists try to grapple me with. If you've gotten this far, thank you for listening, because this is an answer I give to every theist, and they never are satisfied by it. But this is the only answer I think is honest, at least for me. Do you have true knowledge? Do I have true knowledge? No. I have no true knowledge. I know nothing. If you think there is such a thing as true knowledge, I don't know what it is, and I frankly think you don't have it either. But I don't think any of us can acquire that, because I think it's a made-up idea. The analogy I always use is you always assume a gun is loaded with bullets. But you can imagine that, well, you have guns that have no bullets in them, for sure. We still have that rule because it's useful, right? So this is the term I use quite a bit as well, a useful fiction. Things like our logic and reasoning, things like numbers in maths, or the concept of math itself, or morality, these things that we can't physically measure or touch or actually observe or collect data on, are useful fictions. And it's the perfect explanation in my mind, and the most pragmatic one. Because if you go into this Platonic idea that, numbers do exist, knowledge does exist, right? Morality does exist as some sort of meta concept that a god must have invented, well, then you get into these sillier ideas. Now, I'm totally fine if you think that, no, actually, like, there is this real thing called knowledge, and there's like a way to obtain it or something like that. That's fine by me. Where I choose the label anti-theist as well is when you use that to push a anti-LGBT, an anti-minority, an anti-egalitarian agenda, especially through whatever religion it is that you choose. What I find is it's the most pragmatic perspective to say that we don't know anything about these abstract concepts like knowledge or morality, but we use them anyway and assume they exist. When I was in the trenches of deconverting and leaving religion and going to my existentialist nihilist perspective that I have been for over a decade now, it was the biggest question. Well, okay, if I don't know if anything is true, and this is what the Ortho Bros, it's a fun place to go and speak to Orthodox Christians, although they are very, very bigoted towards LGBT people. That's another point. And they will press you about, how do you know anything? right? You have to have divine revelation to have knowledge. I will always respond to that and say, yes, I don't have knowledge, but I don't think you have knowledge either, right? And so what is the alternative? Okay, well then you're a solipsist, right? Or you're like a last Thursdayist, or you're absurdist, right? You don't think anything is real. So the reason that I choose to just assume the universe is real and assume that we can more or less trust our observations to make better understandings of the universe, and what is true is what is basically aligned with the universe as we can materially observe it. I assume this as a default framework because I think any other viewpoint leads you to absurdity. I want to try and assume as little as possible, and I think everybody assumes this minimum at the very least, right? Everyone at least assumes that there is a universe and we can measure things about it. We can try and make better understandings about it through evidence, right? If you start with only that and you don't try to add anything beneath it unnecessarily, then I think you'll have a very fair and realistic worldview. Because again, if you don't have that, what can you be? You can be a solipsist, right? You can be a theist espousing these claims that don't align with reality. What does that lead to? Right? If you have an evidence-based model for how you understand the universe, then you will stay in line, your thinking will stay in line with how the universe, we see it as it is, at least as we understand as it is. And it's a constantly evolving model. As we understand more about the universe, our model will also align with that. The issue is saying there is knowledge and you have to have it through your worldview. You have to have it through this divine revelation, which is what a lot of recent quote unquote intellectual Christian theists are saying. Then you have to have something that is even greater than evidence in your worldview, right? Your knowledge, your divinely inspired knowledge, is a stronger root than what is evidence. So this will lead you to saying things like, if evidence is in one space and the divine knowledge I hold is in another space, I will hold the divine knowledge at a higher level. What does that mean? It means you deny evolution happened because the creation story is your divine knowledge. It means that you deny the rights of LGBT people because you think that it is inherently bad to be gay or bad to be transgender because this is from your divine knowledge. Even though all the evidence states that for psychological reasons, for health reasons, for egalitarian reasons, if you have an idea that for scientific reasons, right, not just in humans, but in other mammals, you see people being gay or other animals being gay or whatever, or gender queer is completely normal and has been normal throughout many societies in human history, is nothing to, it shouldn't even be moral, right? It should just be like, my hair is blonde, Timmy is gay. It should be just as normal as that, but it's made into something that is abhorrent, right? It's made into something that is considered a sin. And that's why I feel it's necessary to speak out. That's why I feel like we have to keep talking about how strange these ideas are and how persecuting these ideas are to people that should just be treated like any other human being. And it's something I think if you trust your heart and you trust what you believe in and you want to speak to truth, then I have to speak out against terrible things at the root core. And that is a big part of it is religion today. Religion today saying it has this ultimate truth, that it knows better than anyone else, and that ultimate truth goes against what we understand through evidence, which is that, science works a certain way. It's better to treat people who are minorities a certain way, right? It's better to treat women as equal to men. It's all these other things, right? So I've gone on a huge tangent here, but I really do think the whole purpose, the whole reason we should keep pursuing truth and talking about it in the deepest level we can is because it helps us more as a society. And it hurts us when we grasp onto things that are silly.